Oh, yeah. That's a new thing.
Yeah. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm privileged to have Aman Ashraff in our series, Let Us Be Honest. And I'm very thankful to Aman uh, because he uh, gave his consent to be part of this interview series. Just for the benefit of the listeners or viewers, I just want to give a brief introduction who Aman Ashraf is. He's a person who hails from the advertising and branding industry. I believe Aman has worked in a number of multinational and local advertising agencies. But now he has his own operation. He has his own company. He has set up his company. He's working with several clients. And I thought it would be interesting to feature a young person who's been in the communication industry to speak about, speak about this Muslim issue. I don't want to say Muslim issue, but the issue that people bring about, saying Muslims in their community, there are a lot of extremists and people with extreme views. And then there are allegations about Muslims not buying products from Sinhalese shops. These are common views that people have. Definitely not the view of Marv Institute or my personal view. But before I put Aman on the spot, I just like to ask him, because Aman, I saw on your LinkedIn page, very interesting lot of videos that you have done, documentaries that you have done. So I like to start off this interview by asking, okay, what are these videos? What prompted you to do it? What was the motivation behind it? Can you tell us a little bit about those videos that you produced? Because I'm really interested to know.
Thanks, Samar. First of all, I think I should extend my thanks to you and to Marga Institute for inviting me onto your program. I believe you're referring to the videos that are on my YouTube page, the harmony related videos. It was quite straightforward. I felt that from a core perspective, I was raised to believe that the Sri Lankan identity, which many of us profess to be a part of, gives due respect and cherishes in equal value the religious and ethnic cultural beliefs of every individual in this country, irrespective of which racial denomination they emerge from. That being said, I've also noticed a steady decline in, I'm sorry, is the crow bothering you?
No, that's okay. That's part of
okay. Right. I've also noticed a steady decline in the preservation of these values. It seems to be more of a very less tolerant world that we are a part of today in this day and age. And the lesser the tolerance, the more misinterpretation, the more misunderstandings tend to emerge amongst one another. And I don't think, especially I know you also have an extensive background in the communication industry. I don't believe we have within ourselves the ability to sort of educate individuals in long spells, as it were, to kind of sit people down and put them through hours and hours of, tutorials or what have you. So what I thought was, why not we just give them a reminder of why it is that we call ourselves Sri Lankans? What is this great cultural melting pot that we speak of with such great pride? What does that pot stand for? What does it symbolize? It's not just the Peraharas, it's not just the many tourist spots in this country. It's also the people themselves and what these people represent, right? So I got together with some very close friends of mine, many of whom I have known for decades. And these are all individuals from different walks of life, from different racial and religious denominations. We've known each other, and we've never looked at each other or identified ourselves with each other by our ethnic tags or, our religious tags. We call each other Machan. We, refer to each other in the most cordial and friendliest of terms, because we understand each other's religious background. We understand and respect their cultural backgrounds. We recognize why or rather why each other does certain things in their lives and in their communities. And these are not things that were sort of ingrained in us whilst we were at school, nor were they sort of taught to us by a book or whatever. I mean, I went to a mixed school. I attended a mixed school. My classmates were all, boys and girls from different backgrounds. We merely conversed with each other. It could be during interval, or it could be when you're seated next to someone who is of a different background. We merely conversed with each other. Somebody would ask me, Machan, why do you guys fast for 30 days? And I'd give him an answer. At the same time, I'd ask him, Machan, why don't you eat beef? Right? It's very, very straightforward human dialogue, which I find is very lacking today. I mean, I suppose maybe it's to do with this new digital world that we're living in, where people don't really have the time to sort of engage in a value-based conversation, as it were. We're more sort of ingrained with our devices, addicted to our digital devices. So I thought, okay, why don't we create a series of videos where we highlight what's common between all of us. I mean, there's a great list of differences people can bring together and say, look, you're different in this way, she's different in that way. But if you really think about it, there are much more common denominators between us all as Sri Lankans. And it is those common denominators that give us strength and sort of uphold that Sri Lankan identity, as it were. So that is what I wanted to highlight, and that is what those of us who worked with me on that, on those productions, felt was important to remind ourselves of, that we belong to one nation, we belong to one identity, and we should not let that identity be threatened or undermined in any way whatsoever.
The thing is, Aman, you and I have been privileged in a sense, because we went to mixed schools. And unfortunately, during the last maybe 10, 15 years, politicians in our country also, focused on having segregated schools, particularly outside of Colombia. And an interesting thing came up about a week ago. We were having a discussion with young people in Anuradhapura district. Of course, through Zoom, they connected, and we were having a long, 2.5-hour conversation about all the things that we spoke about. And one interesting thing came up, and they said, we like to live in peace. We like to make it a point to kind of do things together. But sometimes when a problem takes place, what is inside us comes out. Suddenly we see the difference in other person. We look at the other person and says, okay, he's a Tamil or he's a Muslim. And they were saying that they were struggling with this. Those are the kind of singular words that we use. Now, what I want to ask you as a communicator, we came up with this campaign last year when we were countering hate speech. We're trying to make hate speech uncool, harmful speech uncool. And the whole campaign focus was, we said, let's start with ourselves. Sometimes we say, I might say, Aman Ashraff is a nice guy, but he's a Muslim. So and so is a good doctor, but he's a Tamil. That kind of tone of reservation in our whole vocabulary is there, and we felt that our whole language has to change, even in our vocabulary. Now we like to take this whole campaign forward once again as a communicator, um, and also a person who thinks out of the box, as it were. How would you take this campaign? Because a lot of you know awareness, education, communication work that has to be done. And there has to be, I think, in my view, there has to be a kind of a national strategy to, bring people together.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you that you require, it's mandatory, in fact, that we do have a national strategy, because a campaign of this nature will never be successful, irrespective of how noble your intent or perhaps even my intents are, if it does not have the blessing and the encouragement of the state's machinery, as it were. Because it is the machinery of state that has the power to drive this campaign into the grassroots, where it is really relevant and where it would have the greatest of resonance. That being said, I mean, merely to deter for a moment, to touch on 2 points. One was the point you made about, schools pertaining to certain communities and so on. See, we must also, whilst it's very easy to point a finger and say, this is where it all started, having schools for different communities, you must first understand why that situation arose. That situation arose because there was a genuine issue faced by many of the minority communities in this country, where their children were not being accepted into the larger schools.
That's correct.
Simply because they belong to a different ethnic denomination. And not everyone has access to a politician. Not everyone has the means to sort of get their way in. So this led to a serious social issue. And the only way it was resolved was, all right, fine, then we will have to educate our children in institutions of our own and get the state to give us patronage to those institutions. Now, whether this was the best decision, that is up to, discussion. But was it something that emerged out of necessity? Yes. So that is, I think it's prudent and it's paramount that the history and the circumstances surrounding those events are first understood. That's the first thing. The second thing is in relation to what you mentioned about the emotions felt by people and so on and so forth. I recall an incident which took place many years ago, where I met two individuals from the East who had received opportunities of employment in Colombo. Okay. And they had never worked in Colombo before. They hailed from the East. They hailed from predominantly Muslim villages, and they were individuals who generally had very unflattering remarks to make about the other communities, because they had never moved with the other communities. They had been born, bred, educated in a Muslim background. So they came to Colombo, and they worked in Colombo for about 6 months. And one day the two of them turned up at my home. And I said, "Hi, what are you doing here? Come in, have a cup of tea." And they said, "Sir, we've come to apologize." I said, "Why? What have you done?" I said, "No, sir, many years ago, when we would be critical, you advised us not to be so critical, and we didn't take it seriously. But today, having come to Colombo and working in these organizations, it is the other communities, our colleagues in our workplaces, who we see truly, embracing us, truly looking after us. They come and ask us, "Me machan teh ekak biwada, machan kama kayawada, waren gila kama kamu." You know, they were dumbstruck, flabbergasted, because they never expected this kind of genuine, humane hospitality. They felt they would be viewed as, something lesser than what you'd find in the gutter, right? They were so overwhelmed. Immediately it was a 360, and then they went back to their villages and they started, sharing this amongst their circles. They said, look, you guys need to change your thought process, because what you perceive is completely wrong. So it's important, I feel, that it's important, I feel, that this bridging between communities takes place, particularly in communities where there is less or perhaps even no interaction with other communities. And, certain communities are in dominance in those regions. It's important that there is interaction, whether that is going to be through trade or whether that is through scholarship programs, education, whatever that may be. But that interaction, that the forging and the sustenance of those bonds is paramount in order for that understanding. Because for people to claim that, they react in this manner when things go wrong, there's the old English saying, understanding breeds tolerance. So the more you get to understand your neighbor, the more tolerant you become of his, little quirks or whatever.
The other thing, Aman, what we have gathered in the last couple of months, it's very interesting, the data, the views of people. For one, I feel that COVID-19 has kind of, made us look at life, look at our community, look at the country, look at other communities differently. And we have kind of come of age, or we have got maybe educated through COVID-19. And a couple of things that come out. One is very starkly the way males in the villages, the way they look at females, has gone through a kind of a transformation, I would say. They look at females with more respect. They feel that females have a kind of certain skills and kind of ability to bring communities together. Females have come on a better place. That's one thing. Second thing is a kind of awareness that has come about where people say, look, we got to look after ourselves. Nobody's going to do that for us, right? Politicians are in the business of dividing people, and we got to, do something about it. That kind of awareness has also come in, and I'm wondering whether, from a communication point of view, whether we can leverage on that, and whether we could kind of build the Sri Lanka of tomorrow with an added hope, because I think people are willing to be together more than they were in 2019 or 2018, right? Even when we look at Easter bombings, it's a different light that people look at it. It's happened, but there should be no room for racial disharmony, racial conflicts. So I don't know. As a person from I hate to use this word. I maybe use it only once in this whole conversation, right? And you probably you will excuse me, you will forgive me for using this word. As a person from a minority community, do you think that there would be kind of better relations between different communities, different ethnicities, or do you think we'll go back? Do you think, as a communicator, whether we could, leverage on these thought patterns that has emerged, and do you think that we could use that for our kind of national strategy to bring communities together? That's another question I had.
Certainly. You just need to excuse me for one moment. I'm going to try and get rid of this crow for a moment, just a moment. Apologies. Apologies. I had to get rid of a very loud crow in the background. In relation to your question, fundamentally, I would say yes, the communications industry has an opportunity to make a profound difference if they were to capitalize on the opportunities that present themselves in this environment that we are in. And yes, COVID has, I would say, given us a very powerful wake-up call, to recognize what our real priorities are, not just as Sri Lankans, but also as human beings, when we live, insofar as we continue to exist on this earth. But whilst I would agree with you, and whilst I would say that yes, it has given that period of reflection has enabled people to understand what is, or rather, not the word understand, I'd say be able to comprehend and understand truth from fiction, rumor from reality. Whilst that is true, I don't think we should underestimate the susceptibility of human nature to fall prey to rumor and innuendo, which always will be there and which will always be utilized by the political machinery of this country to its benefit. So when the opportunity presents itself for us to, if COVID and especially these lockdowns, our dependency on our fellow Sri Lankans of different backgrounds has increased tremendously. These are excellent opportunities for you to get to know these people, which you would have taken for granted under normal circumstances. It could be the man providing the produce to your home. It could be the man delivering milk to your home. It could be the pharmacist who you visit to get your drugs, whomsoever it may be. It's an excellent opportunity to, just engage in a conversation and try to, get to know a bit more about each other. Because that I really do feel, I know I seem to be repeating this again and again, but I've always felt that the more you understand an individual and the more you get to know of an individual's heritage, traditions, and cultures, the easier it is to get along. And language plays an immense role here. I mean, we are also living in a country where you and I would communicate in a link language, such as it is English. But there are individuals who don't have a link language, and they focus entirely on the Sinhalese language, which is our national language, and the Tamil language. That has yet again split this country in two, and has been the cause for a great deal of frustration amongst peoples of different regions in this country. So that again is an opportunity for when we spoke of a national strategy, that again is an opportunity for the machine of state, the engine of state, to ensure that the people of this country, or rather the future, the children of this country, are trilingual. Because in an ideal scenario, any Sri Lankan Sinhalese should be able to visit any part of the north or any other part of Sri Lanka where Tamil is a predominant language and be able to converse as a regular Sri Lankan. Likewise, a Tamil or a Muslim should be able to visit any other region where Sinhala is spoken in dominance and be able to converse in Sinhala. But the value placed on being trilingual is far less than getting an A for mathematics, for example, right? And I feel it should be the other way around.
Actually, you will be happy to know that we will be just releasing a short video, couple of short videos on Facebook and other social media that Marg has produced, presenting the value of learning a second language.
Excellent.
Actually, I will send you that video by WhatsApp right now. It's on the email. I would like to get your kind of expert opinion as a communicator.
Certainly.
On the edit text, so on and so forth. But coming to my actually final question, sorry, once again, I'll put him on the spot, but I must say at the very outset, this is not my personal view, and neither it is our Marga view, but there is a view that there's more kind of extremist, people with extremist views within the Muslim community. I'm just saying, I'm just expressing a view. And the allegation or the general grouse is the moderate Muslims like you. I know for sure that you're a moderate Muslim, right? Okay, that goes beyond any doubt. But my question, or the question that has been put forward, is what are you guys doing? Moderates, why are you silent? Why are you not addressing these things? Now, this question is not coming from Marga or from me, but it's something that I'm expressing.
I understand. Yeah. See, first of all, I mean, let's be honest here. Extremism isn't rooted with one particular community. You find extremism with every community, not just in Sri Lanka, but all over the world. Right. History would be if you just look at your history books, not just in this country, but around the world, in international history, dating back all the way to the Crusades and even beyond, religion and extremism has played a pivotal role in the dominance, in the acquiring and the consolidation of power, right? And it has been used as a very vulgar weapon. It's not something new. So I don't think it's fair to say that the Muslims are the only, I know it's not coming from you or Marga, but I don't think it's fair at all to insinuate that the Muslims are the so-called extremists of Sri Lanka. No, I don't believe that's so. There are issues in this country, in Sri Lankan society, where extremism has taken root. You need to first identify where that root emerged from and the cause for that root to emerge. And why have those roots not been expunged to date? What is preventing the state, whichever state that may be? I don't refer to the incumbent government, I refer to the state of Sri Lanka in general. Why is it that these elements are allowed to thrive in continuance, right? If it is in the greater interest of the Sri Lankan people to foster and cultivate a harmonious society, as we pride ourselves to be a harmonious society, then it is up to every Sri Lankan to say, no, we do not tolerate this form of extremism in any way whatsoever. We are against it. And it has to be a universal condemnation of extremism in every form. I would be the first, and I have been in many ways, to condemn any form of not just extremism, but even ultra-conservatism that emerges from my community, right? But it isn't just my community. There are many others here. And I don't think we should spend time pointing fingers at people. So I think what's important is to recognize that we as a nation have over I think we are close to upon 75 years as an independent nation now, as a democracy. We as a nation have evolved considerably as a harmonious nation, living in peace and tranquility with each other for a considerable amount of time. It is unfortunate that I would say in the last close to upon nearly 60 years, I would say, perhaps since the Language Act was passed in the 60s, the Tamil people of this country have been wrought with grave injustices as a result of Sinhala being made the predominant official language. And that has obviously led to other issues that the Tamil community has faced, grave issues, issues to which they have not received viable solutions to date, right? Which is why, the dialogue continues, so to speak. So I think it's more important that people in general come together and say, look, we recognize one another as Sri Lankans, but not, and recognizing each other as Sri Lankans and not as individuals of other denominations. It doesn't matter when your ancestors arrived in this country, whether it was 10 years ago or 200 years ago, it's of no consequence whatsoever. If you're born in this country and you're a Sri Lankan by birth, that is all that matters, which means your inherent rights and privileges must be protected and upheld. It's as simple as that. So if that is the spirit in which we can all move forward, then it would be very, rather, it would be less of a challenge to prevent any form of extremism and to build a society that we can all be proud of. But so long as these petty differences are highlighted and entertained, and this sense of one-upping each other, the practice of one-upping each other continues, we're never going to find a solution to this situation in this country. So that has to stop. And we need...
I think it's a global problem. It's not
absolutely.
Because I just was part of a study program a couple of weeks ago, and I was sponsored by one of the universities. And one of the programs we were talking about, one lecturer was talking about extremists, and they were highlighting the white supremacy kind of extremism that is taking place in the West, and also looking at lone wolves, what we call these lone wolves. One person gets up in the morning and he's not motivated. He's motivated by his kind of socialization that has taken place in the last 5 to 10 years. He gets up and he decides to shoot up some people, and then they come up with this response saying the whole of society has to get together, right, and find ways or means to kind of diffuse this kind of extremism. So my question was, okay, here in Sri Lanka, the whole of society has to get together, and all of us have an equal responsibility in dealing with the extremism that is in the Tamil community, that's in the Sinhala community, that's in the Muslim community. I think people have to realize that we have collective responsibility.
Absolutely, but I would add to that, this collective responsibility becomes a toothless tiger without the support of the national engine.
Yeah, correct.
If a government, if the position of a government is that the so-called collective society has to resolve this internally, it doesn't work that way. This has to be advocated and empowered by the state to the degree of having laws or policies that forbid this form of thought or the propagation of this kind of thought in any way or form. So,
Yeah, I would take it a one more step ahead. You know, when you talk about the state machinery, I think we
yeah,
need to find champions, people who
absolutely.
champion.
Yes,
And
yes.
I don't want to mention names or whatever, but I think they are. I'm sorry to say, some people who champion this cause are no more today.
That's right. That's right.
And, you know, we lost some great politicians even during the last couple of years.
Great. It's,
Yeah.
I would say it's a irreplaceable loss.
Yeah.
It's a profound loss.
Yeah,
Uh,
when you think of people like Mangala, right, and who really kind of stood up for
hmm.
this sort of thing. So I think it's time, Aman, for your generation to kind of pull your socks up and pull your sleeves and say, okay, we need to fit into this role and take it on.
See, in terms of so I suppose I'm at what I'd like to call the intermediate generation, because nowadays a generation after me that has come up and is far more vociferous and dynamic than even my generation ever was. But something I've always said to youngsters who've spoken to me, I've always told them, look, it's very admirable to be on the left, or it's also admirable to stand up for what is right. But that being said, you must never lose sight of the reality on the ground, because you can't just adopt a policy that works well in another nation for whatever reason, and imagine that it would be easy to implement such a policy in this country, because you first need to understand the temperament of the people and the issues that the people of this country are facing on a day-to-day basis. So what may appear to be the most important ingredient in our society or in the future of our nation moving forward may not be the highest priority to people who don't have who don't have money to put food on their table, right? So you need to see that there are checks and balances everywhere, and unless you find some form of equilibrium here, it's going to be very difficult to achieve what you want, irrespective of how noble your efforts are. So yes, I agree with you that the future generations, and perhaps even my generation, we have a great role to play. But in doing so, we should never lose sight of what the issues are on the ground amongst the common man, as it were. And it is those issues, I mean, you don't build a house top down, do you? You build it bottom up.
Yeah.
So that is the process we need to follow.
Yeah, absolutely right. I think it has to be a kind of a generational project.
Yes.
And having, okay, go for the lower hanging fruit first and, not get discouraged, that's why I always say we got to have a national strategy where we know, okay, what are the performance indicators that we have set in place to know, okay, where we know we are going in the correct direction. So maybe in the first couple of years, we should be able to achieve few things, maybe another 5 years, more things like that. And I think if you have that kind of approach and try to get the state to buy සිංහලෙන් කියනවනේ ගබ්බෙනෙක් දන්නේ ආණ්ඩුවයි රජයයි අතර තියෙන වෙනස. ආණ්ඩුව and රජය are two different things, like that, the state and the government, or whatever we call it. So we got to work with this 1.5 million state public servants that we have. Right?
But there again, and I must confess to be somewhat disgruntled by this. because you used a word, or rather a phrase, getting the state to buy in. And that's my issue, because from my standpoint, and I'm subject to correction, but from my standpoint, I don't think if it is something as pivotal as charting a better future for our country, one where, you know, there is economic sustainability, where there is harmony and coexistence, I don't understand why society has to convince the state to buy in. That should be the paramount responsibility of any good government. But that's not something you and I are seeing today. So that's quite sad, but that's for another discussion.
Yeah. At the end of the day, we must realize that the government that we are talking about are people from society. They didn't drop from some other country or some other planet.
No.
These are the people that we are producing, and these are the people that we are going year after year and voting them in and saying, okay, you leave. And we give them maybe another additional 100,000 votes, you know, for them to continue. Okay, I think we have kind of taken a lot of your time, Aman.
My pleasure, my pleasure.
I initially told you half an hour, but I have taken much more than half an hour of your time.
How long?
Right? I think we're all working from, I'm working from my bedroom.
Oh, right.
Right. So I've been asked not to step out of the house by my children because of my age and all that.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. So anyway, thank you very much. I think you brought out a lot of insights, and I think you not only spoke for yourself, but you spoke for the young generation of Muslims, young generation of communicators in this country, and I'm very thankful for your points. I think we should continue this conversation on another day, but certainly we must work together and build a better tomorrow for our children, our grandchildren.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So thank you once again.
Thank you very much. And once again, thank you to you and to Marga as well.
And have a good day.
You too. Take care.